Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our annual congregational meeting of Metropolitan United Church. My name is Dave Spencer. I'm chair of the Board of Elders, and I'll be chairing the meeting. But first, we'll let Jeff start us off with a prayer, and we'll remember those that have gone before us.
Thanks so much for coming tonight, and thanks to everyone who made the amazing pancakes. It wasn't quite the same without the cow dices, but thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. O Holy One, as we gather in this time, we give thanks. Give thanks for the congregation you've entrusted us with. We pray, O Holy One, that your Holy Spirit guides us tonight as we continue in the way that you've taught us. We pray all this in your name tonight. Amen. Will you stand with me as we remember those who have departed? So we bow our heads in prayer. O Holy One, we remember those who have gone before us. We remember Ramona, Emmy Bosley, Ralph, Dorothy, Ronald, Peter, Edna, David, Elizabeth, Lois, Eileen, Ron, Maureen, Marion, Elaine. Remember Nan and Donna, James, Branka, Bud, Selena, Kendall, Gerald. Oh, Holy One, so much more than just names, the relationships that we had with each and every one of them, each in different ways. We give thanks for the way in which they enriched our congregation, and how it is they helped us to grow, to learn, to pause, to remember. As we remember them, O Holy One, we remember the great promise that in life and death and life beyond the grave, that we are not alone. We trust now that they have joined in the great chorus of those in heaven. O gracious God, may they continue to inspire us. In your name we pray. Amen. Please be seated.
Thanks, Jeff. One of the things we do at the United Church is that we, those of us that are members of the church, usually vote to allow adherents, that is, people that participate in the life and work of the church but aren't necessarily members of Metropolitan. We allow them to vote at this meeting. It's commonly done. It's been done in every other meeting. At this point, I'd entertain a motion, the motion that's on the screen, and it's hard for me to see here, so will anyone make that motion? Thank you. Al? Seconded? Garth? Sorry. Thank you, Garth. In favor? Are there any opposed? That carries. Thank you. Second, everyone has the minutes, the minutes of two meetings. First, the annual congregational meeting from March 1st of last year, and second, the special meeting that we held on August 14th to consider a pastoral appointment. I think we'll consider them separately, just in case there's any issue. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes for the last congregational meeting, please. Murray, thank you, Murray. Seconded by Al Harrington, thank you. In favor? Any opposed? Thank you, that carries. Second, the minutes of the special congregational meeting that was held on August 14th to consider a pastoral appointment. Entertain a motion to approve those minutes. Betsy, thank you. Seconded by Tom Slade, thank you. In favor? Thank you, that carries. Carrie, if you can give us your report on MNP, please.
Okay, rare glimpse at my face. I don't know if I've showed my face for a long time. Hey! So I was told I have to keep this quick before the sugar crash hits, for those who've done the pancakes. So hello. For those who haven't met me, I'm Carrie Lasky, and I have been serving on the MMP committee for several years. And then in the past year, I've taken on the role of co-chair along with Betsy Hamilton, just to help balance the load and also to facilitate transition. So if you've had a chance to read the report, you'll note that it's been an exciting year for MMP as we move into life with less pandemic restrictions. Indeed, MMP has been actively supporting a return to staffing levels that appropriately meet the needs of our congregation. And to start, I'd like to thank our spiritual leader, the Reverend Dr. Jeff Crittenton, for all of his hard work shepherding us through the rough pandemic and that time of reduced ministerial staffing period. So thank you, Jeff. So Elders has created some unique partnerships with some other churches for some of our key ministerial positions, which have helped us to meet the needs we have as a church through some dynamic people while keeping the costs as low as possible. And MMP's been actively working with these other churches to support these partnerships. We have a number of new staff and shifts in positions which MMP's facilitated this year, including Marilyn Arthur, our multi-church youth minister, and Jen Prince, our pastoral care minister, whom we share with Richard's Memorial. I think you'll all agree that they're doing a fantastic job. Yes. Also, our office staff positions have been solidified from more temporary assignments, and we've created a great team of Linda Webdale and Jim Gillespie, with a slight reduction in the amount of administrative support that we've had from previous. And I think it's all going quite smoothly, as hopefully everyone agrees. And then we've also had a shift in our sexton positions. John Lee has reduced his hours to part-time, and Chris Jackson, as the full-time sexton, takes on the senior position. I also want to recognize the hard work and dedication of all of our staff who rose to the challenge of remote services within our great room, all of the disruption and work of the renovation, and this new and expanded functions that go with this beautiful space. So I know you'll help me recognize all of our incredible staff and the blessing that they are to the church. I won't list everyone here, but encourage you to read the report for their names and thank them all for their contributions. So we have a dedicated and skilled M&P committee in Murray Faulkner, Ross Turnbull, Betsy Hamilton, as well as myself. Their insights and contributions have been so valuable this year, and I thank everyone for the work that they've done. The work we see moving forward this year includes supporting our new staff and the partnerships with the other churches, monitoring our staffing needs and responding accordingly, and the routine work that we do, such as ensuring supportive documents are up to date and accessible to our staff. So thank you to the congregation and the elders for the support of this committee. Yes, hello, I see you. Yes, Anne.
Maybe I missed it, but surely to goodness, this group owes Rick Wood the most colossal debt of gratitude.
Thank you for... And hopefully people kind of read between my lines without getting into all of those specific names, which I do in the report when I talk about all of the work that we've done this year and that Rick has helped facilitate with all of those things I mentioned. Thank you, Anne, because he has been invaluable this year. And it's amazing. Thank you, Rick. Okay, thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Carrie. So most of what goes on at the annual general meeting is primarily financial, and Tim is skilled and humorous in his approach, and sometimes you need a good sense of humor. You've probably had a chance to look at the financial statements already, and they're, it's a bit of a rough document, but we knew this was coming. I don't think we ran into a few headwinds we weren't expecting this year, but this has all been planned. We were expecting to be in a deficit position this year and next year. We don't know how much longer that'll carry on. Tim has some good data to share with us on that. So this is planned. This is part of what we were expecting, including this fantastic space we have here. We also realize that over the last couple of years, we've asked a lot of this congregation. We raised over $1 million in, 3.5 weeks, Jeff? And that's not preacher math. That is exactly what we did. And so we really didn't think it was prudent to be making big asks for our operations of the church. We normally ask that people contribute their annual dues that we pay to the national church, $35 a person, I think it is. We haven't done that in several years on purpose. So we understand and respect that there's been a fair amount of strain on people, financial strain and other strain over the last couple of years. So that's part of what has resulted in the reduction or the sort of leveling off in givings, not to mention the fact that the church was closed for a good part of the last couple of years. But some of the things that we've done, including bringing on 2 outstanding staff, members of our staff that will help build this place for the future, that's part of the plan as well. And you know, if we can't minister to the youth of this church, then we're it. And you know, if I was 45 years old and had a 15-year-old son or daughter, and we didn't have Marilyn Arthur here, I wouldn't be here. I couldn't be. So it's going to take a while, and Marilyn has 3 churches, so that means that her gatherings of youth can be bigger. And it's been a long time since I was 15, but if I was 15, I'd rather gather with 12 or 14 or 18 other kids rather than with 3 or 4 kids at one church. So that's part of what we're doing with this shared ministry. And we're very glad to welcome Jen Prince onto staff. Jen's known to many of us from her work at Fairmont, and I worked with Jen as we were creating the youth ministry position, and she's just a delight to be around. So Jen will be able to take care of us and take care of our pastoral care needs. So with that introduction, I'll ask Tim to give his always entertaining financial presentation. Thanks, Tim.
That's pressure. I think I'll just say I second David's remarks, and I'll close and see you later. No? he did good. It's difficult to prepare for this meeting and think, what can I say differently? You know, the last 5 years, I've said the same things I said the 5 years before that. The trends were clear. There's no surprises. I think many of you could stand here and give the presentation I'm going to give. And if somebody would like my position as chair of this committee, please take it from me. I'm not sure what kind of penance I'm doing, but Jeff says I have to keep doing this. So I thought for just a little bit different this year. I was criticized for not using numbers one year on a Zoom meeting. So this is going to be just pictures, graphs and charts and numbers, no words. So a little different, right? So, and here's the first one. And the premise of these isn't that I have a point for the slide. It's that I think I can answer any one of your questions with the 10 slides that I put together. So feel free to interrupt. Feel free to ask. If this is just pure Q&A back and forth, that's great. If you don't want to feel like I set you up because I have the answer on page 3, if you want to see me go through page 3 and then ask your question, that's fine too. But make it as dynamic or as interactive as you want. So I've been told I could use this. That's okay, Jeff? Okay. The last point is you know where we sit from a deficit perspective, and I hope I get a question from each and every one of you, and it's $20 when everybody hands you a mic, okay? So, is that a good fundraiser? Okay, couple quick pictures here. So, I asked elders in our last meeting, I said, give me your questions. What do you think the congregation is going to ask? And these slides reflect those questions. And one of the questions is, where are our givings going? Where are the trends? What are you seeing? What are you projecting? I think everybody in this, everybody listening to my voice right now would be able to answer that question. They're going down. But there was an anomaly in the last couple of years. It was called COVID. So the trends are a little fuzzy right now. So we're trying to assess that and try to give you the best information that we can. So here's clearly is a trend that we were seeing. But we have a shortfall here that wasn't expected. That's our PAR and credit cards, which is our bread and butter. That's the money that shows up whether people are sitting in the congregation on Sunday or not. The red bar are envelopes. Typically just if people are here, that money comes in. We get a little bit more sometimes on mailing, on special mailings. People will send in money from time to time on e-transfers, but basically it's bums in pews is that bottom number. So COVID hit, obviously we went down, not a big surprise. We had to jump back in 2021, but last year, while we had services out back, this room was closed for a good portion of the year. And that affects the number of people that we could get in, and that was, we think, reflected in some of the envelope donations as well. So we were down there, a place where we didn't like to see. This is hard to say, but if I think about a few people that I know on the list that donate through PAR. The impact there was the renovation project that we did. There were no, people weren't going, yeah, I have an extra $100, let's put that onto my PAR. Or, yes, I have a year-end donation, let's do that. It went to this project, and that's great. And that's kind of what David was getting at, that finance stepped aside for the last year and a half or so and said, we're not going to compete. We don't want multiple asks where people are trying to rip their dollars in portions and hand them out. This was the #1 priority. We'd been asking for it for years, and elders and you all stepped up. That's great. I said from this position last year that said that's going to affect us. We're going to have a big deficit. We projected a $76,000 deficit. We missed it. Came in, missed it by a good 40,000. But that's 2% of our budget we missed it by. So that's still pretty good management of the money side of things. So that's the income side. If I go, done. Go to the next slide. This is the expense side. Again, standing here, I said a lot of these things, and if you want to question me on it, please do. The question that we had back in 2015 or 16 was, the giving trends are going down. We're having trouble changing that trend, aging congregation. We need to be cutting expenses. So there you see active effort to cut expenses to the extent of stretching some people to the breaking point. We didn't hire. We went from 2 full-time people in the office to 1. We went from having multiple ministers to 1. Pastoral care suffered. Our children's ministry suffered significantly. The children's ministry ran on a $25 a month budget last year. $25 a month. That's not going to attract a lot of kids. A lot of volunteers, so they had some bodies, they had some help and stuff, but not a lot of product. So some pretty significant cuts. What changed in about this time was the stage project was approved, and elders made the call that said, okay, we can start investing in the future. We can start getting the staffing back up to where it needs to be, and finance said, we can't afford that. And the pushback was, we need to do it, so find a creative way, and hence the shared personnel that Carrie was talking about. Genius solution. We're going to need to do more of it. We could do it with custodians, we could do it with admin staff, we could do it with support staff. It's going to grow, it's going to really help us in the long run. But it was a one-time kind of get back to where, this is salaries in blue. Here's where, I'm going to change my color here. We're in this area, we're still under where we were back in 2015. And remember, last year inflation was well over 6%, sometimes close to 10%. Salaries didn't go up that much. If you're looking at anybody who's working here and getting paid, you should know they all took a pay cut last year because we did not increase their salaries to the rate of inflation. They are doing much more with less. But we're still under our 2015 number. What's inflation been since 2015? We should be way higher than that. That's the cuts that have happened and what people have been doing. And right now, I'd say we're just barely back at full staffed. There's still committees that are being run with a lot of volunteers that would probably prefer to have a paid person there. The amount of hours that, I can't even see Rob, he's up there in the dark, Rob Cairns. I could go through the whole music committee, everybody on there, the number of hours they put in for the little bits that they are paid is beyond me. They're punching way above their weight, as they say, so it's great. So, but that is a change, right? Those are going up. That has driven this. I'm going to clear this. The other portion of this chart is right here. From there to where that increased. That's a solid 10% bump on utilities. Heat, hydro, water. Happened at your house, it happened here too. Okay? We're having more events here, that means there's more heat being used. Well, we're getting money for it, but still, there's a cost to that. So each of those ministries have done a fabulous job. I've talked about music, so I'll add it on again. They never use their budget. They always come in under budget. But they tell us this is what it might take to do that. In 21, we weren't open that much. 20, we weren't open that much. We had some savings. Last year, even though we were out back opened, we had full choirs, we had full participation. Yeah, not picking on music, it's just one of our largest ministries. Still to come in under budget was really good. And it's shadowy, but I think you're back there, aren't you, Greg? Yes, so thank you. Could they do more with less? Sure, everybody could. But there's a cost to that. So what finance has been trying to do is balance the recommendations to elders that says, we can't afford this. If you need to do it, it's got to be a solid investment. And I think that message has got through clearly. It's not a one-time message. You've heard me say it here many times in the last 12 or 13 years. But it's true. We're running a very lean ship. The next slide, take the income and expenses and try to put them on the same chart, at least some of them, to try to give you a picture of it. So and on this chart, expenses are green. You can see what I talked about, where we're, how color should I pick here? How about blue? So downward trend on expenses, trying to match the income that was going down at the same time. Did a pretty good job for a number of years. We had a lot of balanced budgets. There's the increases that I talked about. Inflation, getting back to full staffing, albeit with very creative ways of doing that, but still a higher cost. We're still below where we were back here, or at least equal to that, so that's good. But our income dropped off for some of those reasons I said on the first chart. So if I just clear all those, that's our gap last year that we weren't thrilled about. That's how we missed budget. If we look at a couple pieces, our PAR number down here, going down, is the one we've always liked to keep tight with salaries. We have to pay those. Whether you're here on a Sunday or not, we have to pay those salaries. So we really like when people contribute through PAR, because even if you're away for a month, your donation still came in. So that's really positive. And I'll come back to that at the end of the presentation. We're going to be making a couple slight changes to that. But there's the gap, right? It's unmistakable. It's not a trend. It might be an extension of the trends of these things going down, but there's been a short-term change that has what we predicted would happen, but it's been an investment in the future. So I think it's been a wise one. If we look at, again, something we've been preaching about for a number of years is trying to raise regular, consistent other forms of income. Not a special ask that we have to keep begging, but something that will stand the test of time. And we had a couple things happen here. The trust income is in gray. I'll use this one. In gray over here. This is where we started getting some donations to the foundation, and in turn, they send the income to the church. And that's a good $15,000 bump to our bottom line. We're now starting to get the other rentals one here in purple. This is primarily the London Symphonia partnership starting to come in. That's a good start. But London Symphonia uses this venue 7 times a year. There's a lot of other weeks, a lot of other days, a lot of other opportunity for income from this room, let alone the other rooms. And if we can get back to being a community center for the city, there's opportunity there. I don't mean to squeeze a nickel out of everybody who's using the place. Even this beautiful sanctuary will be rented out to groups at discounts that are charities or community groups. They're not all going to be high-paying, big-ticket items. We're going to be giving back to the community. That's our outreach. That's our job. Same thing for other rooms back there. Be it an AA meeting or anything else, they might be free. But there will be other opportunities to have groups come in and spend or charge them a little bit of rent that will help the bottom line. And in there, we can see that number do more. The beauty about these two things, the trust income and the rental income, is it keeps pace with inflation. Think about the donations that you made this year, well, 2022. Did you increase them by 10% to match inflation? I didn't. We're paying 10% more for groceries at home. We're paying 10% more for everything else at home, heat and hydro. To also increase the donations, that's pretty tough for most of us. So that goes up with inflation. We're able to charge more rent because inflation is higher. Markets go up with inflation. We're able to match that. So This is a bulletproof form of income. We need to focus on that and get some more of it. We won't get enough to run the whole place. That's not the goal. If we can get 100,000, 150,000 from rentals, well down the road, that's not going to happen tomorrow. That would be a good way of taking pressure off people having to donate. The other element of the income is how many butts in the pew, so to speak. Now that we're back to full staffing, we got a shot at that. As David said, it's tough to bring your kids when there's no kids program, or not one that your kids can kind of brag about. So we have that now, and we have full staffing. Nothing wrong with what people that were here were doing. They were just spread too thin, and you can't do everything. I should have lowered the price on the microphone. I'm not getting any questions. Okay, first question $1, second question $2. I don't really have much to say on this slide, but if you have a question, I can answer a lot of stuff on this one. But I guess I'll just point out a couple changes, maybe reaching into the budget here. This is what we're projecting or requesting for next year, a 10% increase in givings. That's a lot, but we didn't ask for anything last year. So we're catching up on that year, and I don't know that each and every one of you can, but I'm hoping the average will be 10%. We'll get to this at the end of the presentation, but when's the last time you received a pledge card from us saying, what do you want to give? That was finance taking a back seat for the last couple of years during this process. We have a new process we're ready and excited to launch on March 1st. A mailing will go out saying, here's the new pledge process and the new time of year for doing it. Not in the busy October anniversary time frame. Right now, when we have real budget approved numbers that says this is what we need. Not, oh, give us some money, we'll see what we can do with it. It's like, no, this is it. This is hard and fast, and you can look at your budget and say, okay, this is a real number. How can I help? If you can't, you can't. But I don't want it to be a number that you go, well, maybe they don't really mean that. No, we mean it. This is a stretch target. So, program activities and stuff. These budgets really haven't changed much other than a little bit of heat and hydro and, inflationary kind of things and restaffing. Every other budget came in the same or lower than last year. My first question coming in, $20. Okay. Sorry, my apologies. If I can get this working, I will turn that ringer off. So again, we can come back to that with questions if you want, specifically what's in each of these budget items. This is a very condensed version of what you have in the report in front of you, so we can cover all that. There's the balance sheet side of things. Wow, phenomenal activity. Think about how much we banked for the renovation project and how much they've now spent, which is good. That's right. We want them to spend that money, right? So all that's happening. A couple things to point out on here. Metcare's meal, that wasn't a very good circle. They're running a little low last year. So this year you'll see a special ask come out for that says we're going to try to top that budget up. That's not a financial thing. They actually had too much money in 2021 and they passed some of it on to the outreach committee to be donated to the community. So your donations were well spent, just it needs to be topped up again for this year. The rest are just tracking what's happening. So the bottom line budgets, how are we doing? This is what we've been projecting over the last 5 or so years and the results that actually came in. Nice to have some balanced budgets for a couple years. Happy to see that. This is the one that surprised us a bit. 2020, a COVID year, how did we raise so much money? CERB. We got government support, got extra money in, gave us a nice little boost, and we used it to cover kind of 2 years. So those 2 years worked out to be pretty much balanced, so we're happy there. This is the projection that we said was going to be tough. This one we said would be tough as well, but we knew we had the CERB money, so we weren't terribly worried about that one. But this is the one that we said, heads up, we're not fooling, this is going to be tough. And it was. We missed by 2% on the wrong side. pretty much the opposite of what we missed on that side. We did better that year than we thought. So, you know, you win some, you lose some kind of thing. But it's not on the expense side. People are managing that stuff well. It's on the income side. So we don't see it getting a lot better without doing something. And our pause from asking is ending. March 1st, we'll mail out our letters that say we need a 10% bump and a few other things, which I'll get to in a slide or two here. So, as bad as that sounds, because I kind of focused on the negatives through there, but I'll go back through it again for you and show you all the positives. That we delivered this program for $25 a month, that we found creative ways to get new staffing in place, that you invested in this project and it's going to pay big dividends. That's what came from the congregation over those 2 years. I can't stand here and say, I can't believe you didn't give us $100,000 to balance the books last year when you gave us $750,000 to do this. That would be pretty insensitive of me. That's not a bad news story. $100,000 deficit is an investment in this. It'd be great if we could do both, don't get me wrong, but that's tough, that's life. We have to balance that. I think now that this project is predominantly done, we can get back to focusing on the budget and getting closer to there, as this takes time to generate some bigger revenues. No. Take it away. Was that Al?
Just looking at the numbers.
I'll repeat the question.
Okay, thank you. Tim, when you look at the last 2 years and now this one, those numbers give us a figure of $252,000, 3 deficits totaling now. So that's $250,000 that we will have been under and will be if we still have the same deficit of the 113,632 this year. So we are mounting up into numbers. And what you said a year ago in last year's meeting, you said we would be in, I think the quotation one, I'll just read what you had said last year. You said that while the church has reserves to help to cover a deficit, in the short term, this is not a sustainable pattern. A quote from your...
I think what you meant was in the long term, not a sustainable pattern, but yeah, short term can do it, yes.
Yeah. So the question is in the event that this continues, you said we'd have reserves, and the problem that I'm looking at in terms of the change in our balance sheet, which is very significant, in the assets in 2021 at the end of the year in the operating fund was $366,211, and at the end of this past year it was $160,043, or a decrease of $206,168. And in the savings account, it went from $983,462 down to $491,933, a decrease of $400,000, $491,529. So I'm looking at the reserves and where we're going. So the overall assets on the balance sheet were at about $1.5 million in 2021. We're now under $1 million, so it was $1,424,000. We're now at $966,088, a decrease of $500,000. So in terms of, and I know you're more optimistic this year, which is fantastic. In the event we don't, what will these reserves that we're looking at? Is this a time to look at that, or should we go try for a good year this year and look at it for next year?
Just a couple things in that question. A lot of numbers, but I think I got the gist of your question. So in looking at the balance sheet, don't get me wrong, it's an important document, but it doesn't, looking at the bottom line doesn't tell the story there, Al. So is there do I have concerns about a deficit? Yes. Can we do this multiple years? Absolutely not. Last year, as you read, we were prepared to take the hit for the 1 year and step aside. It would have been nice in a fairy tale world that something magical would have happened. But the reality was the only thing that would have saved us from that would have been somebody dying and donating a bunch of money to us, which hey, would have been nice for the year, but now we don't have their power for the rest of the years, and we'd rather have them sitting here, their company, than just have their money, right? So we knew last year was going to be that kind of year. So I'm going to almost say your question is irrelevant when I give you my next part. So, but I don't want you to take that away from it. What I've just said is 100% support of you that, yeah, we can't keep doing this and there will be a hit to the balance sheet. How long can we do that? I'm 100% on board with it. But the 500,000 piece, you have to scratch that from your piece of paper. So here's the 500,000 that's on this page. So we had set aside 500,000 for the sanctuary project, and they spent it. So that's the $500,000 change in the bottom line. That's not us going into deficit or overspending. That's just allocating the money that you gave us in 2021 for a project that ran in 2022. So, but keep in mind the rest of what Al said about, you know, that deficit. And okay, you said last year, what are you going to say this year? Right? Are you going to say this again? You said we couldn't do this for long. Are you going to say we can do this again? Well, so far I'm projecting the same kind of deficit, 100-odd thousand. So far it sounds like I'm saying, no, let's just keep going. We're not. If you've read the report, you know that, but we'll come to it on this next slide. Is that fair? Okay.
Tim,
Yeah.
could I suggest while you're on that, if I could suggest while you're on that slide, call attention to the bottom line there, which I think is the number Al was looking for, which is how much change there was in the unappropriated reserves. Because you're right, Al, that like looking at the bank balance, people gave us a lot of the money for the sanctuary renovation fund in 21, and we spent it in 22. At year end, it was in the bank.
So what Al said is, if we were going to do this again this year, we'd be in deep doo-doo. But the fact remains, we won't spend an extra 500,000 this year. That was money that was pre-raised. Once it was raised, then we spent it. Even for the Take It From the Top project, we didn't spend money until it was raised. And the church didn't lend money to the program until we had commitments for donations that were at least double what was coming out. So if, Take It From the Top, for example, I remember Al and I talking, going, could we afford to give you another 200,000, give us 200,000 right now to do the next stage of brick pointing or whatever we were doing at the time? And it was like, well, not quite yet, you know, give us a couple more months so we get a few more donations in. As long as we got half of it, we'll give it to you, knowing that the congregation is good for the other half, kind of thing. So that won't happen again. But what if it's $100,000, not 500? That changes the math, sure, but it doesn't change the story. That's still a horrible number for 100,000 in the hole at the end of this year, right? So, okay, so there's the question. What's going to happen for this year? Okay, here's where I kind of tried to pull it all together for you: income, expenses, and yesterday, today, tomorrow, kind of thing. So, here's where we were in 2020, in 2010. And unfortunately, a chart didn't pop up on the bottom, so I'm going to pull it up on my page to tell you what those colored bars are. So this is our givings. Obviously, that's par and everything else, right? This red, that's our rental income. This is our trust income through the foundation. This is salaries. This is operating expenses, heat and hydro. And this is everything else, all the other expenses. So obviously salaries are our biggest budget, right? That's where we were back in 2010. You can see while our givings have gone down, our salaries are back to where they were. We went down and up, we saw that on the other chart. What I'd like to see is always have our income exceed our salaries. Right now, we're okay there. I'd rather it be just par covers our salary, but right now, total givings will do that. But look, these bits of income, rental income or trust income, don't match the rest of the budget. There's our deficit. So while we can say we're going to cut salaries or something like that, that's a huge impact on programs. You know, do you not want to be visited in the hospital? Do you not want your kids to have somebody here to meet? Do you not want to meet somebody in the office when you cut? Like, tell me what you want to cut. We can cut a person, but those have significant impacts. And they're going to go up a little bit because of inflation. Right? So this from here to here, that's just inflation. We're not planning on hiring anybody else. If there's a case for that, elders will have to pitch it and say this is why it's a good investment. What we do need to see is this growing to try to catch up to that. These ones, we can do a little bit of work to maintain. Utilities, really hard. Inflation drives those pretty good. We can turn the lights off all we want, but heat's our biggest cost here. There's no insulation in these walls. I hope I hear more people say what I heard somebody behind me say. It's cold in here. It's 19 degrees in here. On Sundays, we bump it up to 21 for the hour and a half that you're in here, and it's back down to 19. We don't want the heat just oozing out the doors. Regular expenses, other expenses. If we're going to impact the budget on the expense side, it's people. If we lose people, we lose programs. If we lose programs, we lose the congregation. I can sit here and tell you to turn everything off. I can sit here and say, don't make 3 photocopies, but I'm nickel and diming you. I want you to do that. I don't want you to make any copies. I'd like you to bring your own coffee on Sunday mornings. But that's not gonna find $100,000. We have to balance the long-term picture with income appropriate for the programs that we want to provide. So this is our stretch target. That's a 10% increase in givings. That's doubling of our rental income. That's doubling of our trust income. And it's still not quite going to get us there, but I think it gets us in the 50,000 deficit range. As a worst case, we might have 40, might have 30, but I think it gets us in the 50,000 a year range. Yeah, and how long could we do that? So I'm coming back to your question now. The 500,000, we'll never have to do that again, unless we raised it first. But 50,000 a year, we could do for 8 years. Remember, we still have the foundation as backing. We still have equity in Fairmont. We still have other things that we could draw on. But I don't want to spend $600,000 of reserves in a couple years. That sets us up for failure, that if something major here breaks, how do we fix the organ if it goes kapooey overnight? That's a big bill. We actually have some special gifts set aside for that, so that's actually not a good example. But, something like that major happens, right? You need to have the reserves. You need to have emergency money in your bank account at home just in case something happens. So, same idea. So that's kind of the picture that we're seeing, and that's where, while we're projecting 100,000 odd deficit, we're really thinking it should be about 50,000 end of the year if this pledge campaign and what we're doing generates some results. If it doesn't, we will know at the end of this year that my projection of 8 years is 3, and all hands on deck, something has to change.
The graph on the furthest left or right-hand side, you're saying if the projected support from the congregation goes up 10%, then the deficit drops to 50,000?
With a few other moving parts, but yeah.
Tim, I'd like to, my point number 2 for talking today was that very fact. The 50,000.
Did you pay for the first question? I just can't remember.
I pay double for the meal tonight.
It's exponential.
Okay. No, but my figure was, I think 50,000. What I don't want the membership to get into is to show figures so large that they don't think we can get there. And so 50,000, I think we can handle. And I'm going to be speaking to the elders on the 16th of March, and I think we have a way to start doing some things that will be beneficial. Hopefully, if the elders give us a go-ahead on that. So I think...
You talking about growing the congregation?
Beg your pardon?
You talking about growing the congregation?
Has to be. That's,
No. I'm with you. I wondered that's what you're talking about. Yeah.
My thesis always has been from some time,
Yeah.
is that the way to solve the riddle is to increase the population at our church. So that's my goal, and we'll be talking about that on the 16th.
So let's be careful and be picky about the time frame.
Okay.
So I'm talking 3 years here. We need to do something. Beyond that out here, we are going to be tired of doing that. We're going to need somebody new to do that. When we get a new member to the congregation, let's be optimistic. $100 a month donation. That's pretty good for a brand new attendee to the church. But the person that passed away yesterday was donating $1,000 a month.
I realize that.
So we need a bunch of the new ones
Yes.
to work up to that. And I don't want to have somebody new show up and say, hey, thanks for coming. We really need $1,000 a month. You know, they're gonna come in that door and go out that door, right? And just like my wife did, gone. You know. So yeah, and we didn't do it when we showed up, right? We matured and we got our finances, grew our kids, everything else, and now we're in a position where we can do more. We're doing more. That's great. There will be a stage where we can't do more because we're paying for nursing homes and everything. Like it's phases. So all I can do is predict or project what I think we could do in the short term. I can't predict, but I would not predict that this 50,000 with the things I'm about to suggest is going to sustain us for 10 years. 3 would be good, and everything you're doing for maybe realistically it's the 4th, 5th, 6th year. You got to plant that seed now if the tree's going to grow, right?
Correct.
So yeah.
Okay.
Could I ask you,
Wait, is this a family rate discount?
I don't do his stuff.
Oh, okay. Pay your own bills, got it. Okay.
I'm just wondering why we're not passing the collection plate. I think we're missing some funding from that aspect. With the little plate over there, I think people sometimes don't even notice it. And certainly a member of our family, when they come, they used to always pick an envelope, giving envelope out of the pew and make a quite generous donation. Now I think they just leave without having that aspect.
They got escaped.
So I think it may be nickel and diming, but I think you're missing some money.
Yeah. Can I extend that a little bit further? What about those listening online? Are they donating? You know, probably. You know, like it's me at home watching online. I'm giving on par. You know, so they probably are, but we don't know that they are. Just like when the plate got passed, and a lot of us around par just kept passing it. You know, we used to put a card in once in a while because we're embarrassed, right? Oh, make sure. Now we don't do that. So so it's difficult to say that passing the plate will generate more, but I'm 100% on board with you that there's a sense of I have to make a conscious choice right now to put something in here or not. One of the suggestions that went to elders in late in the year was for Christmas was to have elders standing with the plates, just to thank people for being there. And again, you can't make them put something in the tray. When you pass it by, you can't make them, but it's a good acknowledgement, isn't it? Yeah. So I put that on elders' plates for I don't, it's not gonna work, but we gotta try stuff, right? Yeah. What do I got here? Getting a little long too, sorry. So this is the last slide? Yeah. And then feel free to go back to any slide, ask any question, whatever you want. So this is what we see as the next step. So the pledge process is changing. The fact still remains that we would send out a pledge card and we would send out 200. We'd get 50 back and try to estimate on that whether everybody's going to increase their donations or not. The stats just never worked for us. We could never get any data out of there that we could build a budget on saying we know what the congregation is going to give next year. So we're switching it to just saying this is what we need. We've done the math. For what we're getting, we need a 10% increase across the board. And if you can do 11 or 12, great, because you know somebody's only going to be able to do 2 or 3. Not to pick on anybody, so don't put your hands up, but if you donate by credit card, I can guarantee you a 3% increase in your donations without you changing a thing, other than stopping your credit cards and putting it on par. When we run your credit card through the machine back there, we get billed 3%. You get 1% points. I get that. You want your points. I understand that. We paid for those points. In fact, you paid for those points by donating 3% less to the church. You want to increase your givings by 3%. It will cost you your 1% points. I get that. Switch from credit card to par, and there's a 3% bump. If you can add a little bit more to it, that would be great. You also save the time of staff in the office having to process that every month. Par happens automatically. We get 75 to 80 people on par, and they charge us $25 a month to do that. We could have 700 people on there, and they still only charge us $25 a month to do that. It's the most economical, simplest, and efficient way to do it. So I used to say, donate however you want. That's okay. You know, just know if you give us $100, we're only getting 97. Just know that. But we need that extra 3 now, so stop using credit cards. If you have a super duper point card that gives you all kinds of things, we're getting charged 5 to 7% for that one. So if you got a platinum something or other that doesn't fit in your wallet because it's so juicy, you could do a 10% bump just by stopping that and going on to par. So we can get there. I'm killing the travel industry. All these travel points are going to go away. So if you're not on par, join par. The number one question I get from people is, well, I'm not sure if this is what I can donate in the year or not. Just to pick a number, if you're thinking you could do $100 a month but you're not positive, start par for $50 a month. Then at the end of the year, give us a check for a little bit extra if you were able to save that. If you get more confident throughout the year, call the office. They'll increase your par to whatever number you want. You get partway through the year and jobs change and things, call us. We'll reduce it. But at least we know every month that's coming in, whether you're able to be with us that month or not, whether you're on vacations or whether you're helping with the family in the sandwich generation, whatever it is, we know that's coming in. That could be a 10% increase for most people. Might not be able to attend 10% more times and put 10% more envelopes in the tray if it's passed around, but par can make sure it happens. So that's another good one. Yeah.
I was just going to say, one thing I'd like you to mention as well, I've heard from numerous people when there's different asks through the year, so like the Christmas hampers, other special projects, folks have the ability to send an email money transfer to the church office as well. And I've heard from numerous people that even though they might have a set giving on par, and just being able to contribute through an email money transfer, was literally, somebody said a godsend one time, and it was both for the church and the programs. So I think that's really helpful.
I don't disagree with that at all. My preference is still par because it happens all the time. It's like saying your boss is going to pay you by e-transfer, and you just hope he's on the machine he or she's on the machine that day to pay you. But if your paycheck's on automatic payroll, you know it's going to hit there every Thursday or whatever day. That's what we need. We need the same thing to make sure it happens. But for the one-offs and stuff, yeah, that's super convenient. There's some fees involved for e-transfers, but par is no cost to people on their bank accounts, as far as I know. So. And we'll do, in that mailing, we'll do an estate reminder as well. We haven't done that in a few years. Even the foundation took a back seat to this stage project for, sanctuary project, for being able to raise money and stuff. So I'm sure they'll circle back to that with their marketing as well. It says make sure your wills are updated, make sure you considered the church and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to continue to balance holding the line on expenses. We send out the budget requests every year to the ministries and say, cut as much as you can, and they come back with what they could do. They never hit their budgets. I don't, so give them credit for all that kind of stuff. They always spend less, but they know, they project it. If something breaks, I'm going to need that money. So they give us a heads up that says, instrument maintenance, for example, if it breaks, we're going to have to fix it. So we need a little bit of room in our budget just in case. If it doesn't happen, we save some money. So that's great. But that's happening well, and we have to invest wisely. So if we're going to spend money on something, it can't just be because it's a good idea. It's got to be, it's a good long-term idea, it's a good investment, or if there's an extra dollar sitting around, 10 people in this room are going to put their hand up who work here and go, I could use that. Everybody is in need of extra money. So if we have an extra dollar or have a dollar once we spend someplace, it's not really that, is it a good idea? Is it better than the other 9? Like that's the kind of logic that's going into any expenditures right now. So, and in short, we need to, I think, provide time. That's what we talked about last year. We talked about it 5 years ago, and we said we need to look at doing something like this. Who would have ever envisioned that this is what it would turn out to be, just spectacular? But we said that will take time. Construction itself takes time. Then getting groups to come in here and use it will take time. Folks that will book a venue for a yearly event have to book a year ahead of time. We just announced in September, October that this was available. We're not going to get a lot of bookings this year because those people are already booked at other places. But we're hoping to introduce them to it, at least have them come to an event, put things on where they can see what it can do, and then come to us for 2024. Get a few more, build a little more momentum, 2025, a little more, right? This is going to take some time. And we'll plateau at some point. We'll be making a bunch of money, think this is great, and you go to make more and go, we can't do it with just volunteers. We need to start hiring staff to do this. So we'll plateau at some point for a while before it might grow a little bit. So it's running a business. You have to invest, have to have some volunteers to get it started early on, and then as it matures, you might have to start paying some people. So there's the goal: double the rental and trust income over the next few years. We just have to. These stage lights are great, but it's hard to see people. It's really the glare on my glasses more than anything, but yeah. Take it away, Ann.
Does the Kiwanis Music Festival use us, and do they pay?
To my knowledge, they do not, and do not use us. Greg? Yeah, they do not. If they did, they would. Yeah.
We were the venue for the choral, one choral section, and for the Rose Bowl.
Add them to your list.
Yeah, we haven't done that in probably 12 or 14 years. They have venues that they're ensconced in, and I don't know, we could obviously raise the question, but I don't think that they would move. They're very happy where they are.
And that's running a business, right? You try to put your best foot forward and attract people. You can't be all things to all people, but we're in the game now, at least. So. Yeah. Tom, yeah.
I just want to remind everybody that while the church within is beautiful, there's still a lot of work to be done outside. Yeah. And some of it is going to be in the near future. So we mustn't forget that. You've got the 2 towers to do, and you've got some slate work to do on the back portion, the circular portion. Now, I'm not going to talk about the pointing of the brickwork, because I don't know how that's going to be done. The safe thing is that it doesn't really matter in that sense that the building's not going to fall down because of the mortar, because these walls are very thick. But it is a problem that may have to be faced.
Yeah. 100% agreed. And those will be special asks. We'll have another mini campaign that says it's time to do the towers. Anybody got to take it from the top to an new buzzword? We have some good name. Yeah. We could charge for that, naming rights on the project. Right? Yeah.
Just so that you know, it's not a family cohesive matter. Point number 3 in my notes was restore the collection on Sundays, and that was not even talked to us over the dinner table.
Is that great minds think alike or fools never differ?
If you recall, Tim, I developed a welcoming card, that we had in the pews. And as Nancy says, we know people that have come with us to church that use those cards. So one of the things I would suggest is that we always make sure not only telling the people about the great things we do, because we are doing great things, but also be open about the fact that extra money is always welcome at Metropolitan. So I sometimes get a feeling that we don't really care about money when you don't have a collection, you don't talk about it in the service. And I think you can do it very nicely, saying that if you'd like to make a contribution to our church, there are envelopes in the pew, and that could bring in another couple of thousand. And the third thing,
I add to that, you can donate online, right?
Yeah, okay.
Because some people just won't do it in
Right.
the envelope, but yeah.
And the other thing I would mention, David has already lined up a time for March 16, which will be an elders meeting. I'm hoping to have one of our congregant, Henry Berg, with me at that meeting. And we hope that we'll be able to look at some things over the church, what we might be able to do, and pull together some people to have a focus group to look at ideas of what we might be able to do. So that meeting's open, David says. Anybody that would like to come at 7 o'clock, we'd love to see them.
So you definitely owe $20 for that one, because that wasn't a question, that was a commercial.
What's that? What's that?
You owe me $20 for that, because that wasn't a question, that was a commercial.
I'll give you, I'll give you 30. You're on.
Okay, there you go. Checks in the mail, right? So, yeah. So, and last thing is continue the creative growth side of things. We haven't talked a lot about Fairmont tonight by name, but it's in all the numbers. You can't imagine, you can't understate the significance of that. Saving a church in a community, providing assistance to the local schools, now a garden going in there to feed the masses. Like, the outreach opportunities are stunning, and we're making money off it. We are growing equity in that location in the tune of about $125,000 a year, depending on the values change and stuff. Can't eat bricks and mortar. We can't cash that $125,000 in. But that's adding to our assets. That's adding to our future. If 10 years from now, somebody else is at this podium, not me, do I have to do this another 10 years? If we had to, we could sell Fairmont to a community group and say, look, we spent 10 years getting this up and running. It's a going concern. It's sustainable. Why don't you take it with your energy and see what you can do with it? We could get $1 million out of that and replenish our reserves. It's going to be no use to us in the short term from a financial perspective, but what a creative investment for the long term. And maybe 10 years we sell it and use that money to do it again in a new community, in another church, right? That's our outreach. That's what we have to do, keep giving back and stuff. So fabulous. Symphonia partnership, really the word that I wanted to emphasize was partnerships. That's Jen, that's Marilyn. We have partnerships with other churches. The Met Cares food program is partnering with the London Cares. Like, we're finding creative ways to do this stuff. Can't just say, well, why don't we just do this? You need that idea to come with something else. Who else is helping out with this? Who's doing this? We don't have the volunteers to run with your idea. You got an idea, you're the volunteer. And the shared staffing I've already mentioned, but that's kind of the partnership idea. So, okay, so you saw the slides. Flipping back through them, any one of them you want to go back to, anyone you want to talk to about, I'm happy to, or I can just turn it over to David to finish the meeting.
So at this point, we need to do two motions. The first motion is to accept the financial statements of 2022, and that's pretty much just a fact. I don't know what we do if we reject them.
I'll go back and add up again. Maybe there's a mistake.
So I would entertain a motion to accept the, Al Harrington, thank you. Seconded by Shirley Smith. Thank you, Shirley. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Thank you, that motion carries. And the second motion is to accept the budget for 2023, as Tim has outlined in the, I just poured water all over my AGM, so over the
That's why I moved the water over there, so I didn't do it on this.
That's better than spilling it on the iPad.
Yeah, exactly.
The budget that is outlined in the sheets that Tim has included here. And I think Tim's done a good job at outlining what we see right now, but there's some variation in there. And unfortunately, most of the variation is on the giving side. There's not a whole lot of variation on the expense side. There's not much lower we can go. So I'd entertain a motion to accept the 2023 budget as proposed. Scott Gass, thank you. Seconder?
Ann's hands up there.
Ann, thank you. Ann Kidd. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. So I'll be brief. Our report from elders, I think we've covered many of the things. I just wanted to give credit to Jim Etherington. Jim resigned from elders in August. Some of you may know that Jim is having some health concerns. Jim has been a stalwart of this church for many, many years. He's served on pretty much every committee that you can imagine, and he was a great asset to elders, and we miss him. Also wanted to highlight the shared ministry that we have with Marilyn and Jen, and this is great for our church and it's great for other churches. And you know, we didn't bring Marilyn on because we have swarms of 15-year-olds just running around here. We don't know what to do with them. That's not our problem. But by partnering with 2 other churches, we can develop a critical mass, making it worthwhile to have the kinds of programming that Marilyn is offering. So I think that's really important. And as I said earlier, if we had a 15-year-old and we didn't have Marilyn or someone like her here, this would not be the church for us. So that, to me, is essential for our future growth. And Jen takes care of us at the other end. As people are having crises, as people are at or near the end of life, Jen, if you've ever spent any time with her, what a wonderful person to spend time with. As our pastoral care minister, we're so lucky to have both of them. And Tim touched on Fairmont. Fairmont's a big deal. It really is a huge community center and a community that is underserved by community centers. And right now we have the London Consistory, which is our largest tenant at the Fairmont campus. I recall a couple of years ago I donated something to the London Consistory. It was on Wellington Street, and they distribute primarily mobility aids for people in need of mobility aids. And to get to this building to donate it, I had to climb up 8 steps. So they were in a bad spot, and where we are now is fantastic, and I think they're very happy. I think, Jeff, you reported they had loaned out 6,800 pieces of equipment over the last year. So they're serving not just the community, but the whole city. And it really is a good investment for us as well. It's fully booked, I believe. It's fully rented, so we're getting both community benefit and financial benefit out of Fairmont. Sanctuary renovation, we've talked about this quite a bit. Al, thank you very much. And I know it wasn't just Al, but you led this program, and it came on exceptionally well. I think we're all very happy, and I don't think it's wildly optimistic to expect this will be a venue of choice for many people. There's a sense of occasion coming into this building. Going into Centennial Hall, you kind of feel like you're walking into a high school gymnasium. This is a beautiful place with beautiful acoustics, good seating, great sight lines. I can imagine some of the shows that are at Centennial Hall eventually migrating here. I don't know, Irish Rovers, and seriously, why not? I mean, the place would be packed, and it would be fun, and we would generate some income and some publicity from it. Finances are tough, but I'm strangely optimistic. I don't know why I am, but I'm strangely optimistic. We have not made significant asks of the congregation for the last little while, and we're also seeing some growth in the congregation, something that I honestly couldn't stand here and say several years ago, but we are seeing some growth in memberships, and with that will come hopefully some youth, And with that, eventually will come some money. Now, we don't expect people to join our congregation and instantly give $200 or $300 a month. That's not a reasonable expectation, but if we don't have the people, we need the people, and we're glad to have them. Last, all the things we've talked about really come, although we civilians or lay people are arguably the leaders of the church, Jeff is the leader and the manager of the church. Jeff is a good manager. If he didn't have if he wasn't a good minister, he would have a future in business. He's good seriously, he's good at seeing what needs to be done years in advance, laying the groundwork so that it becomes obvious that it needs to be done, and then it gets done. And Jeff, thank you very much for that. And that's not a typo on there. Most of you know that Jeff is to be awarded his second doctorate at Westminster Abbey, no less, in July. So congratulations on that, Jeff. So I'd entertain a motion to accept the reports as published in my soaking wet copy of the annual report. We do the finances separately, but otherwise I'd like a motion to accept as published. Murray Faulkner, thank you. Seconder, Shirley Smith, thank you. In favor? Any opposed? Thank you. It passes. Very happy to report that we have 2 new elders coming on, Joshua Downs and Will Wright. Will is here this evening. And we will welcome them at our first elders meeting on March 16th that Al has done such a good job advertising. So. We do need to make sure that you want us to be the elders. So at this point, I entertain a motion to appoint the slate of elders on the screen to be elders of Metropolitan United Church for 2023. Al Edwards, thank you. Seconded by Murray Faulkner, thank you. All in favor? Opposed? That carries, thank you. New business, Anne, I think you said you wanted something. Could you get the microphone over to Anne, please?
Three things.
The first one's $20. Second one's $200. The third one's $2,000.
First one is super short. The light outside this door is broken. It is the only door that is used for the symphony exit. You have hundreds of people filing out that door.
Got it.
And it's not a light bulb. We're not discussing a light bulb. It's the wiring or it's something.
Got it.
And the
Thank you.
custodians know, but if somebody issues a lawsuit, that's not going to be the happy hour. So you need, I don't know, a battery operated something, I don't know what. So
Got it. Thank you.
Don't look at fixing that light. Do something else. Okay? That's the short one.
Okay.
I want to talk about showing the words to the hymns on the screens. We had them up until a few weeks ago, and now we are not showing them. This is probably news to the minister and the choir, because as it turns out, the words are being shown on that screen, all right? But those screens do not show the words. I like to see the words there. I find it easier. Some of my other friends feel the same way. I think that Greg thinks that there are sufficient hymn books for everybody. I'm sure that's true. That we should be following along with the music, and he'd prefer we use a hymn book. I'd like a choice. We have this technology. Why not be able to use it? And if we don't want to look up, we look at our hymn book. That's our call.
Okay. I don't have an answer to that. Does anyone have any intelligence on that? Thank you, Greg.
Yeah, no,
No, you can't have a backhand. The words were put on the screen originally during COVID to provide people with the opportunity to sing or at least reflect on the words without having to touch hymnals and what we then thought was cross-contamination possibility. It was never the plan for the words to remain on the screen long term. I'm a committed believer in the fact that as a nation, we're losing our ability to read and follow a score. Our congregation has always been very musical. We've always used the hymn books, and I feel very passionate about that. However, I'm also aware that there are people for whom holding the hymn book might be difficult. I make a binder for myself every week so that I don't have to drop the hymnal off the music desk onto the pedals. Everything is right in one binder. If you can't hold the hymn book or it's not comfortable for you, just let me know. I'm happy to buy 10 or 12 new binders and put them on the side for people so that they can hold on to them. The other issue is a financial one. It requires us to have 4 different licenses to be able to project the words on the screen. The United Church was very kind during COVID to forgive any sort of requirement for licensing, but that's over with now, and in order for us to be able to project and safely cover ourselves as a congregation, we have to buy 4 licenses, and I think in our current situation, owning probably 2,000 hymnals, that's probably not the best way for us to spend money, so. Yeah, but the thing is that no one from the choir is looking at that. So it's designed for people at home who might not have access to a hymn book to be able to sing the hymns. That's the reason that it's up there. What Jeff and Rick see on the screen there is what the people at home see. So we're not looking at it.
Greg?
Right. 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 I was just going to say, I'm going to eventually have tattooed on my arm the slogan so I can just pull it up and say, it's a work in progress, please be patient. I know Rob is working on it, and we all know that the lighting and the sound is a bit challenging right now, but we have the best guy in the world up there working on it. He's aware of it. If you have concerns about any of those things, tell me, tell Jeff, tell Rob. I swear Rob is here more than I am, so it'll get dealt with.
Greg, can I also just say one thing about the words on the screen? Sorry, yes, this
it's
is
the
me
voice
from,
of God from above.
Yeah.
Funny, I always thought he would be a bass.
Yeah, he's a tenor, he really is. The words that go out on the screens to the streaming, that's covered under a YouTube license.
Yeah.
So we don't have to pay anything for that. If there is ever a claim against us, that means that somebody has just said that we can't monetize it, they are monetizing it. So we have no concerns about putting those words up to YouTube, and we have a lawyer, a streaming lawyer who has given us information about that. So we're good to put them up there, but as Greg said, it is a separate license that we have to pay for to just put them up in our own sanctuary. And the one monitor which is facing Jeff is there specifically so he knows when he's on and off camera.
So if you need a hymn book, let me know. If you need the hymns, whatever, let me know. Just send me an email, okay? And I'm happy to do it for you, okay?
Yeah, if I could just speak to that. There is an important processor that we ordered last March that is part of the control of the house lights that is expected to come in May of this year, although the supplier hasn't promised that yet. But until that arrives, we don't have full control of the house lighting. And then specifically, the changes that we made about 3 weeks ago on the electric panel, one of the new control modules did not work. It is on order, but it isn't here yet. So we've got Rob's hands tied behind his back a little bit on that one just now. That's a temporary situation, but that's the supply chain reality. But once we've got that, then keep after Rob, and he'll make it work.
And you had a third thing?
The words being projected on the center back screen. If you really want to see it, then you know where it is now, so you can relocate yourself in the church to be able to see that and still join in. No, you could sit up. Oh, he thinks you can't read that far. I think you could, though. I don't think that matters. I think if that's what makes you happy, to be able to read a screen, then make sure you make that accommodation so that you are happy. Instead of frustrating yourself and saying, oh my gosh, I can't read the hymnal, the light isn't right, blah, 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 you can actually solve that problem.
Also, you can get on YouTube on your cell phone, because I was just trying to do this so I could see more clearly what was up on the screen. Unfortunately, it didn't work because it was getting fuzzy. But if you've got your cell phone, there you go.
No, I'm not good. I'm still going. New topic. Okay, and don't go like that. It looks really relevant looking around this room because it's strictly a question. What do we have happening or not happening for receptions at funerals? And that looks really relevant looking at this group. Do we have, I mean, in the day, Shirley Harmer, orchestrated a wonderful feast. Is that happening? Not happening? Is somebody else doing it?
It is happening. We've had one funeral since COVID at the sanctuary, and we had it catered. So it carries on just like we did.
It's not a box lunch, I hope. Is that right?
Well, we have an outside source like UCW we use, bringing food in to be able to help. And the different people still serve and offer the hospitality that that's going for.
So it's a spread like before.
Right, but not everyone makes the loaf of sandwiches anymore. That's the trick.
Okay.
So I still do.
What's that?
I still make them, they still like them.
Thank you. I'm good.
Okay. Don't sit down, Jeff. I'll ask you to offer a couple of comments, and then we'll adjourn.
So just very, very briefly, the first is around the passing of the plate. We've been talking about that at Elders. We only stopped because of COVID. And so this is something that we're talking about getting. And if we do so, I'm going to need people who are going to pass the plate. So I'm looking at folks who have all volunteered to help with that, right? Perfect. Okay, only three things. First is thank you. The thank you goes, of course, to all the staff. They know exactly how I feel about them. We couldn't do all this without the incredible staff, all the volunteers, all the leaders. I'm just going to highlight one person tonight, and that's to say thank you to Rick. Rick has been absolutely amazing. and his ability to come week after week after week and offer his very best. This is someone who said, I have a calling. I'm not sure what to do with it. Came to the Licensed Lay Worship Leadership Program that Metropolitan put together, the Center of Practical Theology, got some training, brought in his incredible ability, and you see him week after week after week. The staff know how I feel about them, the congregation and all the leaders you know. But Rick in particular, I want to thank, especially during this COVID time, because he's done so much for so many in so many amazing ways. Second is Fairmont, and you've already heard lots about Fairmont, but I want you to hear one thing in particular. Metropolitan will have complete ownership of Fairmont in 6 more years. Every year, 14% of our mortgage with no interest is forgiven. In 6 years, we will own it completely. So what that means for Metropolitan is financially, let's argue it's worth $2.5 million. That is now in Metropolitan's use to be able to make a difference in the community and to continue on. So when we think about money, also think about other sources of money. There's also the foundation, which we're going to hear about briefly. There's incredible amounts of activity happening in the foundation. Money is coming. Please just be patient with that part of it. What we really need more than everything is for you to invite your friends. We know the one way to grow a church is to invite people to come. Something happens in this place, in this community, that is so meaningful to you that you can do nothing else but want to share it. It might have been a beautiful hymn or a piece of music, or maybe your kid ate the glue with the other kids downstairs, or maybe it was something that you met and you had a cup of coffee and you connected. Whatever it is, let people know. And the third is just to let you know that tonight, 3 new families came and joined us for pancakes. 2 of the 3 families came for a tour of the sanctuary. 3 of the families met you, and you impressed them. They said to me, this is a very friendly congregation. And I said, it is. But did you know about the catch? And they said, what's that? I said, it's $1,000 a month. With this all being said, thank you, Metropolitan, for another, this is my 13th year. It's hard to believe the things we've done in 13 years. Looking forward to more.
Thanks, Jeff. So I think we're done, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Several. Tom Slade, seconded by Ann Kidd. So we're adjourned, but we're not done. I'll invite Dr. Keese to open our foundation meeting.
Thanks very much, David. We will have some motions, and unfortunately, I can't see you from up here, and Ruth Baker is taking out minutes for us tonight, so if you would kindly shout out your name, please, so Ruth can get it recorded. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to the annual general meeting of the Metropolitan United Church Foundation. There were minutes of the previous meeting in our annual report, and having reviewed those, I would like a motion to accept those previous minutes as circulated, please. If I could have a mover. Thank you, Tom. And seconder? Al Harrington. All those in favor? I don't see any opposed. Thank you, they're carried. The next part is the report of the... Pardon? I'm sorry? I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear. Yes. We have an accountant and we have an auditor, and we'll be asking you to approve the auditors for the 2022 statements at this meeting, and we approved the 2021 auditors at the last meeting. So we do. We are, the Metropolitan United Church Foundation is an incorporated under Industry Canada with charitable registration under Canada Revenue Agency. And because of that, we are required to have an audit every year, a formal audit. So there is an audit, and we also have an accountant who does our accounting for us. And Scott will report to this a little bit later. Okay. Does that answer your question? Okay. So now it's just a report of the directors for the year, and I'm going to make this rather brief. As you know, the Metropolitan United Church Foundation's objects are to provide support to the work and the mission and the vision of Metropolitan United Church. We raise money through a number of ways in which we do this. First of all, the foundation owns 289 Dufferin Avenue, and this is rented out as a business property, and there is income from that. Further to that, the church actually holds the mortgage on that particular property, and they receive payments on the mortgage that also support the work of the church. The church also owns the parking lot, and the businesses that use the building next door rent parking spaces, which the foundation collects on behalf of the church and forwards the parking lot rentals to the church as well. Finally, we also raise money and we invest it. Scott will talk to you about how that money is invested. So income from the business, and then income we get from bequests and donations. And certainly I would like to encourage all of you to think about considering recognizing the Metropolitan United Church Foundation in your will, and that could be through something out of your will, through a donation of insurance. There are multiple ways in which you could recognize the foundation and do ongoing work for a long time to come in supporting the work of the church. So what about the property across the road here? We are glad to say that today we were actually able to rent 2 more suites in that particular area, and so only the back top 2/3 of the second floor is not occupied at this point, and all leases are current. Given the fact that C.B. Richard Ellis recently reported the vacancy rate for downtown office space at 39.6%, I think we're doing pretty well to have rented out the space that we do. And that rental income also helps to support the work of the church. We have a board of directors, and we have not had an awful lot of business to worry about in the past year. We had 2 meetings. One of the key things that we do on a regular basis is to meet with our investment firm, and we review our statements of investment and how the money is invested, and to be ensure that it's doing it properly. So having said that much, I'd ask Scott Guest to come up, please, and do the financial reports.
Well, we're in the home stretch, final 2 hours of the meeting. Tim, congratulations. This year, only one person walked out on your presentation. That was great, and it was your wife. That was fantastic. I love to be at home tonight. Okay, we got just a few brief points we want to make on the financials. As David said, there are, like any business situation, there's kind of ins and outs of the financial side. The ins are the donations, the rent, and in most years, investments. Not all years. And the outs are some nominal expenses that we'll have a look at, and disbursements. And the disbursements are a good thing because the disbursements support projects like this at the church, and those are the things we want to do. Just a couple of highlights. $12,835 went to the Shipman Scholarships last year. That's a fund that was a sub-fund in the foundation that every year there's money that goes through the music committee and Greg to support our scholarship Oregon Scholarship students. $150,000 went to support the stage project. Now that was booked in last year's financial statements. You'll see that it's booked on the disbursements, but it was paid out in January. And there were some investment reasons why we wanted to do that. We use High Street Financial for our investments. They're just a great firm.
They do a wonderful job in answering questions, giving us updates whenever we want, and as David said, they present to us every year. This year, as many of you will have realized, the investments as of the end of December were soft, to say the least. And we lost 7.84% on the investments for 2022. Now, just to give you some context on that, in 2021, we made 16.25%. And we knew that that was an anomaly that year. And the minus 7.8% was an anomaly. We gained back just under 5% in the month of January. So there's been a lot of volatility in the market, as again, many of you would know. But when you take a look at the average over the last couple of years, we've done very well. One of the things that you, again, will see on the financial that when you look at comparing last year and this year, you'll see that the bequests were down quite a bit this year. In 2021, I think we had donations and bequests of about 171,000, and last year we had 1,900. So that's not unusual, because the bequests in the foundations like this are very lumpy. They tend to come in very large chunks or not at all. So that's not an unusual thing. And last summer, we got notified by the church trustees that we had another bequest that was going to be coming in from a gentleman who passed away March 30th, 2022, Gord Edison Shepley, not Shipley like the other one, but Shepley. And there's a substantial sum of money that the trustees will be meeting with the executors very shortly to make sure that they understand the bequest and that we set up the proper structures in the foundation to honor that bequest and be true to it. The amount is about $674,000, so it's a substantial amount of money. In 2021, the way that we do the financials is and there might be a typo in the report, I'm not sure, but the financials you're looking at are unaudited financials. What we do is we finish the financials up year end, they're unaudited, and then we appoint the auditor, and the auditor audits those statements, and they're taken to the board, and the board then approves the audited statements, and we did that in June of 2022. And that's normal timing for that. 6 months after, the statements are audited, and there were no anomalies. Those audited reports, if anybody wants to get copies, we're happy to provide them to you. So very quickly, you'll see there's two statements on the financials. There's the statement of financial position. You'll see under the just a couple of real quick points. We won't go through them line by line, but on the liabilities, you'll see that there's 5 numbers there adding up to 179,000. The one that's 156,000 or 150,000 of that was the donation to the stage. So that was booked last year. Remember I said that was paid in January. So all of those liabilities, as a matter of fact, were paid off in January. So there's no liabilities, and that's standard. We book them in the year, and then we settle the accounts up in January for those. The second thing is that that you'll see that the fund at the end of the year was $1,048,000, and then the year before it was $1,363,000. Well, why? It's because of those disbursements, especially the $150,000, and you'll see in the next sheet that the it's reflected in the investments. You look at the bottom number, which is $1,477,000, and you'll say, well, why is that not the same as the one above it? And the reason is that includes the cash in the bank account as well as the depreciated real estate value, which is the house that's on Dufferin Street. I can never remember the house number. David probably can. The next sheet, which is the statement of operations, if you take a look at the revenue, you'll see that the rental is flat year over year. The investments and investment income on other assets and unrealized investment gains. So that can be a little bit confusing, but what happens with the investments is that some of them are dividend funds and they're paying out actual dividends, cash that are used for things like the organ scholarships. It also goes into a number of other reasons that we get actual cash. So you can see that 173, those are actually realized gains. Or maybe there's been some shares that High Street has sold and there's actual gains that happen. The unrealized investment gains, which is the big negative number, the minus 265, those are losses that are not realized. So that's the book value losses. So that's why when you take those two numbers together, that's where you get the minus 7%. I'm trying to make this as complicated as I can so there's no questions. I hope I'm succeeding. I think really that is, those are kind of the highlights that I've got on the financial reports. Before we appoint the auditor and go for the approval of the financial statements, are there any questions? Yes. Are those the copies in the front?
I haven't seen any copies.
There's a stack of them right here on the front pew.
Well,
I'd be happy to give you one when we're done.
There were 75 printed off. I don't know where they went.
Oh, they're not in the front pew?
They were on the Reds.
They were on the Reds. Okay.
Oh.
They were on the Reds.
Oh, they were on the radiators a week ahead. What?
2 weeks. They were for 2 weeks.
Oh, 2 weeks. Sorry, 2 weeks on the radiators. Any other questions? Okay, there is two quick pieces of two motions that we need to do. One is that we do appoint an auditor every year. We've used BDO for quite a number of years. We're very happy with them. Their fees are very reasonable. They take into account that it's a charity that they're working with, and they, as I say, do the audit on the required audit on the financial statements. So I'd like to move that, or put a motion forth that we appoint BDO as the auditor for the foundation. Do we have a, great, we've got, where's my, Dave, it's hard to see some, oh, Murray, sure, of course. Okay, and a seconder? Thank you. All in favor? Great. I'm glad nobody's opposing the BDO organization. The final is just approval of the financial reports on the foundation. I have a motion to approve the financial reports. Tim Lasky, seconder. Christine, thank you. Okay, all in favor? Great, we came under the 2 hours.
There were financial reports. They were printed off. I'm not sure whether they all went from the RADs or not. Certainly when we were absent one Sunday, and last Sunday there weren't any left on the RADs at that point. So I'm sorry if that didn't happen, that you got it, but there are copies here for you to have. The final piece of business here is to appoint the directors for and officers for the foundation for the coming year. The slate normally would be is actually in the minutes and the annual report, but I'll read them out for those that don't. President would be myself, the treasurer would be Scott Guest, and then the further directors would be Chris McKay, Dennis Lunow, Janet Fleet, and Ruth Baker. So could I have a motion to approve the directors and executive as circulated, please? I so move, Marge Frankel. Thank you, Marge. And seconder? Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you very much. That concludes the foundation report, and I'll invite Dr. Crittenden to come back and close the meeting with a benediction.
Thank you so much for a great meeting. Thank you, David, for chairing. Thanks, Rob, for putting together all of the slides and all of the projection, and for all those who watched at home. Thanks for making your way to attending. Just one quick announcement for tomorrow's evening service at Fairmont Campus, Ash Wednesday. It most likely will be canceled. Most likely. Tomorrow morning, I will send out an email through Met News, and it'll be on our website. The same goes true for Greg and his programming on Wednesday, but we'll communicate that in the morning. But if it is snowing or raining, stay home, please. And we'll do it the week after. Yes? Excellent. Thank you, Al. There's lunch on Sunday before you come to the amazing concert. Fantastic. Will you stand with me? We're a congregation who values and lives into hospitality, outreach, and discipleship. Those are the three things that we committed to when I arrived 13 years ago. We've maintained those things, and we're flourishing in those things. It's because of a congregation that cares, that can see a vision, that looks after one another and lives out their faith, learning about themselves as we serve the world and the neighborhood and looking after one another. So go from this place in the sign of the cross, the ancient symbol of the church that reminds us of resurrection, of new beginning, of hope. Go from this place in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, the lover of our soul. Go with this blessing knowing that we make a difference together. Amen. Amen.